Hey guys, wanted to cut a video. Myra and I are going to be recording today, this week's episode, but wanted to talk about two events and how it related to something a friend of the show, Gary Lamb, said about SmackDown. Essentially, he was talking about TV. Why TV. I mean, it wasn't as fun as an indie show. Like, say he took his son to SmackDown, and he brought up how like the commercials and the downtime in between and all of those things of why like going to a nationally televised show is sometimes not as fun as you'd think it is, but it isn't. And how it's but they gave his sons all they talked about. His son and his friends all talked about was Brock return, being there. And I guess they're big moment, Brock fans, and that moment stood out to them and it made them happy for the whole thing, and it was worth it all. And it talks about moments, and we talk about how that's what wrestling is about and not about wrestling. And I think guys get hung up on the, like, oh my God, my match has got to be 5 stars or this, that, and the other. And they try to get so much stuff in. And then over the weekend, we had two standout moments, I think, that proved to wrestlers tell the story, slow down, and, stop trying to get all your shit in. The two moments from the weekend that stand out to me is first is SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar, flipping the ring up with the tractor. Like, think about that. They had zero to do in the sense of like wrestling moves and things like that, and lots of things. And, people can, and we'll discuss SummerSlam a little more in depth on this week's show, and my thoughts overall of it. But, 10 years from now, that's the SummerSlam moment we'll all remember from this year, right? It's Brock and the tractor in the ring. And then on Sunday night, we sat down and we watched the Ric Flair's last match card. And this was the epitome of it. And this will come up on the show. And so for you paywall members, you're going to kind of hear some of this twice. And that part I apologize for, but it is what it is, right? The undercard itself was so many guys doing so many things in the ring. And the matches were like, when we talk about, oh my God, it was a really good match. A lot of them were really good matches. But then, like, what could be argued to be the worst match on the card, the main event, as far as a star rating match, at probably the worst match on the card, could be. I mean, debatable, right? But in 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever, it's the match we'll talk about. Obviously, for obvious reasons, it was the main event. It was Ric Flair's last match. But the moments in the match were like they gave you gave us what you needed to go home happy. And even though it was scary, tough to watch at times, I mean, look, everybody was scared about Rick's health, so yeah, whatever. So think about that from a wrestler perspective that, everybody's trying to get their shit in and prove that they can work. But at the same time, the two things from this weekend aren't going to be any matches, like how great was that lucha match and how great was the four-way with Angels and, those guys involved in it. But they won't matter. You won't remember those matches in 10 years. I hate to be that guy, but you won't. As good as they were, that you won't. You'll remember Ric Flair's match. You'll remember Brock Lesnar trying to flip the ring with the tractor as, that's the stuff that you'll remember. And maybe that's the important part. And that's where we're losing the gap of the difference in, I feel like, if more indie promotions attempted to do what national promotions have to do, which is create moments that you'll remember. But would it change anything? But I know a lot of indie guys want to work the style and work the crazy, and prove they can work. And I'm not saying those matches don't have, because they always have their place on the card, and it's cool to watch. There are teams and there are wrestlers that on the indie scene that you remember and that you don't forget. It's because they get it. And it's also, to me, I tell people, it's also the ones that transition better to the main, national scene than a lot of other guys. There comes a moment where it needs to click. And I think the guys that start getting the moments over moves concept, you're the ones who make it. But, agree or disagree, always, tappedoutpod@gmail.com and social media, especially guys behind the paywall. Look, one of the bonuses, I always tell people, if you're behind the paywall and we're friends on Facebook or Twitter, whatever, I'm pretty good. Facebook's better. So I'm on it. I tend to be on it a little more for work and things. I'll respond and I'll try to go back and forth. That's one of the perks of having to be a paid member, behind the walls. I usually try to be more interactive with those folks. Some of the other stuff I don't get notifications on, so that but I check it as soon as I see it. I respond and interact. But Facebook, if you're follow me there, that's usually the good place. So, all right, guys, I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.